Our guest today is Nicole Diehm. She is from the St. Augustine Historical Society. She is the digital collections librarian. Nicole manages the digital preservation and access, including the online catalog, the SAHS digital collections and digital exhibits. She is also focused on outreach, assisting other institutions like us with our digital projects and collaborating on community projects. She's actually been the person I call to ask about anything. So she's got a lot of knowledge, and we've talked about stuff today. It's impressive. She does have an MA in history, which probably helped a lot, and with a focus on public history and archiving, and an MIS in library and information science. I don't know what an MIS is.
Masters of Information Science. It's not MLIS in some places. It's weird.
Yeah, it's really technical. She was explaining to me some of the computer systems that we'll hopefully be using as soon as we start scanning. And after a while, I just glazed over, and that's me. So I'm pretty good with computer stuff. But I was like, okay, too much information. But so, and she's here to talk to us about archiving and whatever actually questions you guys have. I think she'll be able to answer. So come on, Nicole. I gotta go back down.
Yeah, move it up.
No, I can't.
Oh, that's fine. I just want to make sure that was.
Don't break stuff.
It's just your tail light.
I can't see behind. I don't know. I think I am. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Give her a round of applause.
Hello, everyone. That's I feel like I can echo here. So as BJ said, I work in digital collections. I originally wasn't going to do that. I kind of fell into it and found out that I'm actually kind of good with it. I never thought I was until I really started working at St. Augustine. And in the past 2 years, I brought us way forward into the 21st century. They had already had a lot of the kernels, but the people before me didn't have the experience that I did. So I worked for FGCU in their archives, and I worked mainly in oral histories. And I also worked for a museum called Revs Institute, and it's an automotive museum in Naples, Florida. They're huge, it's privately owned, privately funded. It's the premier automotive research destination. So when I started, they had about 500,000 images on their digital library. My job was to create metadata, which is literally when you pull up a record and you have all the information, that's what metadata is. It's data about data. So they had to create a little fancy word. And I helped with research there, and I helped with exhibits. So I would do 6,000 images per month. I had to create the metadata, and then I uploaded all the images. I actually ended doing 8,000 a month. So, and that was including doing research and helping with exhibits. They upped it because we had someone who was digitizing all the slides and images. He was doing 6,000, and they were like, well, we don't need to be evenly matched. We have to upload more. I was like, thanks, guys. I don't have enough on my plate. I wound up working in the corporate archive. As I said, it was family owned, and they had a corporate archive as well. So it was really neat because I got to go to their ranch in Montana, which was in the middle of nowhere. And I got to catalog their private library as well. And I helped with events there while I was at it. And unfortunately, of course, COVID hit. And June of 2020, I lost my job there. I interviewed with the St. Augustine Historical Society. July, they offered me the job. By the day after Labor Day, I started working there. So they have Past Perfect. They had a digital network that was on an actual huge digital server. It's got to be like 100 pounds. I'll explain to you what happened to it, but I refused to get rid of it. I would not move it. I made our IT guys come in and get rid of it. But as I was going forward, I learned that the catalogs were very clogged up. The inventory hadn't been checked in a very long time. And as I said, my predecessors before me didn't have the same experience. One of them was a public librarian. One of them was getting his master's in library science, and he wanted to be a cataloger. So when the person before left, he took over, started doing things his own way, how he was learning, but never went back and changed anything. So when I got in, there were things that were all over the place. Finally, I talked to one of my volunteers who I've been there for a very long time, and that's what she explained to me. He came in, said, I'm going to change things, and then they just changed it, but they never went back. So I have a collections manager. His name is Robert. He just turned 24. He is my fledgling, and he is getting his master's in history. He's slated to graduate not this May, but next May. So I'm trying to teach him as much as possible and making him my packing mule at the same time, which he doesn't mind doing, thankfully. So we have been going through all of the collections and re-inventorying, making sure everything is correct, because we have found out that they've made additions or reprocessed, or someone like made changes, took something out of here, put it over there, and they never updated the actual finding aids or the records in Past Perfect. So I said, my word for this year, 2023, is foundations. I'm going to build that foundation, make it everything consistent across the way. And that way we're going to clean up our Past Perfect catalog and make sure that it's more easily accessible. So I'm literally creating a finding aid, taking it all, putting it into our Past Perfect, and then making it, formatting it so it's very easy to read. And everything we note is correct. One of the things that I found out, our library has about 5,800 books. Well, if you look for, say, pirates, you're going to get like 27,000 hits, because starting in about 2009, they were putting individual St. Augustine record clippings into the catalog as well. So when people are looking for journals and books, you're getting just dozens of record clippings that have nothing to do with what they actually wanted. So I have been manually clearing them out. I started about 25,000 down to 3,000. It's only taken me 8 months to get this far. I do it when I work from home. I put it on the TV and I'm just like, edit, edit, edit. So that's one of the things that I have been really focusing on doing. With our catalog too, we had Past Perfect 5. So Past Perfect 5 was downloaded onto specific computers, and you couldn't get into it any other way unless you remoted into your computer. So I upgraded us to the web edition for a few reasons. With Past Perfect 5, I had to put in so many records and I would have to back it up and upload it. With the web edition, I can click and it automatically updates. So I don't have to worry about that. I can also access my account in it from anywhere. It's on the web. I just log in and I can work from home. I can work. I go on a vacation and I decide to punish myself. You know, I can do anything anywhere. And it's also much easier to use personally. Just the way that it's set up, it's just very clean. Whereas the other one, it looks old and clunky. And also, if you need to add it or if you lose it, you have to pay them to get it back. With the web edition, I don't have to worry about that. So in addition, we also have our digital collections. And that really started out, I found out that they wanted to put oral histories online. Well, oral histories for my master's is, my jam. So I found out that there's a program called Diehm. Flagler College was paying for us to use because interns would come in, transcribe those oral histories, and we were supposed to put them up. So as long as we were having those Flagler students involved, they would keep paying for it. Well, no one did anything. Well, huzzah, I come in, I know how to use Diehm because that was what I was doing at Revs. So I started making sure that we had things digitized. There were some projects that were complete. They had transcriptions, they were ready to go. So I created our digital collections. I made different categories. And then we had our surf project. So that started in 2019. One of the old library assistants started that project. It's oral history. They did it because they found an article from 1915 saying that St. Augustine people like to surf. And then it just exploded from there. We found out that there's this huge community of surfers. Never would have thought about it. We have 60 to 70 oral histories from local surfers. And many of them donated items, so we were able to create a physical museum, which is in the bottom of our Kovar house. So they donated money, they donated objects, and we were able to fund and build that. So on top of it, people were also giving us images. And we created a digital exhibit. Actually, Robert created it. I can't take credit for that. I helped him figure it out, but it's on a program called Omeka. And it goes by collections and exhibits. So you can put like, there's articles, there's images. It's, my favorite is man's best friend, dogs surfing. So you can go in and people can search, they can look for their friends, they can look for their family, put it in the keyword, and it pops them right in. You can see all the images that have to do with that person. So on there, we also put the oral histories, but we had to put links because Omeka is not big enough. So I was able to create a section in our digital collections for oral histories and put a link. You want Goober Bowles, you click on his link and it automatically pops into his oral history in our digital collections. So we have been really leaps and bounds in the past 2 years, bringing digital access to our projects. The next thing I did was with the server. The server was getting to the end of its life. And I talked to our IT and he said, it's going to be $75,000 at least to replace this thing. Because they're not maintenance anymore. Everyone is going to the cloud. The cloud is not scary, it's someone else's server. That's all it is. But the nice thing about that, it's called AWS, we are doing it through Amazon. They have security constantly watching our stuff. So I have them watching security, and I have my IT watching security, and then I'm the third wave. So if I notice something, there's really a problem. I should never notice anything. But part of the reason I did that, number one, our stuff is automatically backed up. I can access it from anywhere. I don't have to worry about that. I just log in, I click my VPN, it's called virtual private network, and I can get into all of my files. And it's backed up. I don't have to worry about a thing. And I can share, I can restrict. So it's the same thing as if it was on that physical server. So that's doing that. I did a calculation over 5 years. I saved us $40,000 by switching. And so the board jumped. They were like, your idea. And the other thing that hadn't been done, a bunch of our PCs were dying. And I went back, found out how long we've had them. Some of them we had for a decade, never been updated, never been maintained. Our IT guys thought I was IT. All I did was take one basic computer course where the first day they said, find the power button. And then I took a networking course, which luckily in my group, because in MLIS, they always made you do group work. We were all online. I don't know why. I was like, I'm a master's student. I don't want to work in a group. Well, thank goodness I did, because I had someone who was just getting her MLIS. And she had been in the business for 25 years, but to get that promotion, she needed a master's. So whenever we were lost, she would be like, do this, 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 and this. And be like, oh, thank you. And if there were any problems, we could tell the professor, hey, she's been working on IT. This isn't working. So we had to stop here and be like, okay. So apparently he knew her. So I have just enough to be dangerous to, number one, speak their language. And number two, when they do something in the command box, I'm like, I know what you're doing. I just didn't remember how to do it. So I have enough knowledge to be dangerous, is pretty much what that is. And for the past couple of years, we really have just blown through the water. My big goal, 5 to 10 year, long-term plan, I'd like to have my own paid repository. We have a lot of geographical, biographical, we have cards and files, and we have property information. We have property cards, Florida master site files. We have files on historic, colonial, St. Augustine. We have all sorts of information I feel like would really benefit to be online. If we did it as a paid repository, we get people from France. from Australia, like all over the world. I've seen China, I've seen people in Africa, South America that will come to our website, because I also did Google Analytics. That was another thing. We've never had anyone like watching the data. I set that up as well last year. So we have people from all over the world whose ancestors came from St. Augustine, because we were, founded by the Spanish. And we have a joke, we get it, the Spanish were here. Because you always hear about Pedro Menendez. Pedro and Ponce de Leon and the Fountain of Youth. We know.
Yeah.
There's more to St. Augustine than that. But my major goal would be to get all of that digitized, put it behind a paid repository, and then people can go in for a day, a week, a month, or we can make it a benefit of our yearly membership. If you hit a certain amount, it's just part of your benefits. So that's my long-term goal. Right now, our biggest problem, hearing about seeing this building, I am so jealous, and that it breaks my heart what's going on, because we have run out of space in our building. We have a historic building, it's 3 stories. 3rd floor is the stacks. The 2nd floor is our reading room and our workspace for our volunteers. And the 1st floor, we have a map room, and we have our collections room. Then we have a processing room. Actually, it's kind of like split. We also hold the fort collections from the Castillo. We hold all their books and their vertical files too. And so that takes up a whole section of space. And we have all these other files that are processed, but then we have this room that is just getting backed up because we have no space, even if we process it, to put it. So that is the main concern right now, is trying to figure out, when we get this stuff processed, where are we going to put it? So that is just giving you a kind of general where I'm at, what I'm doing. One more little thing. I am doing exhibits on top of it because we weren't planning ahead, and people were kind of popping it onto my director. They'd be like, I want to do this. And she'd be like, oh, okay. And I said, you know what? Robert and I keep getting pulled in to do all this stuff. You know what? I'm getting involved and we're making a plan. So we have a plan for 2023. Anyone who wants anything, I made a form. You can submit it to me, and it's for 2024 now. We are done with events and exhibits. We have everything ready to go. And we are also, our objects were kept separate in a different catalog. And then I found out that the person who was doing it didn't know how to use the computer, and she put everything in notebooks.
Oh,
So I'm pretty sure she did a really good job of actually categorizing everything. But now I have to transfer it. And we really don't use objects at the research library. And I don't know if everyone knows, we're the umbrella of the Historical Society. We have the research library, which was in the old public library. Then we have the Oldest House Museum Complex. So they have the objects, we have the manuscript collections, the books, maps, things like that. So my purpose for this year is to combine everything, put it onto one catalog, because the fun part about Past Perfect is I can say whether or not something is public. So they don't have to know about all of our objects and our artwork, but it needs to be kept in one place so we have proper access to it. So what questions do you have for me? Yes, sir.
Probably got a wrong question. As you mentioned, we're being kind of kicked to the curb, and we're looking at alternatives that will be 2,400 to 4,000 square feet, hopefully. Inside of that is an opportunity. BJ's probably told you about just what we have, and that we have an opportunity to look around, and that's just a fraction of what Cherie has, and it runs the gamut, ephemera, and images. The more from the local newspaper is 100 years worth. We have tons of stuff on legacy media, Cherie has it, oral histories, images, video. So there's a tremendous, for a small town, a tremendous archive here. Our challenge is that we are a small town. We're very proud of the fact that Diehm is 170 members, not all living in town. But the real opportunity is along the lines that you've been working, kind of digital outreach and making it available to the world. We are just kind of, that's a dream at this point. So my question to you, with all that background, is where does a small group with insufficient funding, frankly, such as ourselves, where do we begin? I heard you mention Past Perfect as the software platform. Is, if you were starting from scratch, is that the one you would choose?
No.
And two, how would we begin to put a plan together using the resources we have on hand, but limited financial resources, and then resources within the community, maybe individuals with a little bit of technical background, maybe high school
Yep.
Kids, that, how do we get started?
So the best place to start is what you think is most important. So what do you want to digitally preserve first? Once you have what you want to preserve first, how do you want to preserve it? Is it just digitally? Are you looking, obviously, you probably want to also do it physically. But digitizing, I know that BJ has already gotten a lot of equipment and it looks like it's solid stuff.
You told me.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
talked about it.
that's right. I've talked to a lot of people every day.
Well, you're helpful.
It's my pleasure. That is literally what part of my outreach is. But definitely start with the most important thing. Figure out where you want to keep it and how you want to keep it. It can be something as simple, we actually keep our database in File Explorer. It's just, it's on that network. You guys don't have to have that. You can start with a removable hard drive. Just make sure you're keeping that hard drive safe, maybe get 2, so that way you have a backup. So in case something happens to one, you've got a second one. You could even just start small and then build it up later. I would say when you're doing something like that, if you have people that you know will help fund you, create that plan. Like, we want to do this, we think it's going to be this much, this many gigs. We need to get these devices, we need to get these removable drives, we need to get, something in the computer, however you want to do it. Give them hard data and the numbers and just say, this is what will get us going. So that way you can at least get those starting things. Next thing is going to be the collections policy. I sent BJ, for Trinity Church in St. Augustine, I created a digitization program for them. I sent him all the paperwork.
It's very step by step.
Yeah.
Screenshots and everything. And I was reading through it. I'm like, oh, this is easy. I mean, you can just breaking it down and step by step, and anyone can do it. That's the thing, is like,
And
I can help anybody figure out how to do it. And those instructions are great.
And it was based on their machine. I'd be happy to, if you want me to come work on your machines and help you create that for here, I'd be happy to do that.
Mhm.
The main thing is I had about a half dozen people who were gung ho and they were like, we're going to do this. I taught them how to do it. And one of them showed up. She went on vacation, came back and was like, I don't remember how to do this. So I showed her again. She went on vacation. She came back and she said, I don't remember how to do this. I was like, where is everybody? And I couldn't get a hold of the person that had me begin the program. And finally I was like, guys, I can't keep coming in. I've showed you multiple times and we only have one person. So you have to make sure, if you're going to do it, get people who are willing to, it's tedious. I'm going to tell you straight, it is so boring digitizing things. It takes at least 2 minutes per scan, but you have to be detail oriented. And I mean, I play music or podcasts when I'm doing things like that. Do not think it's fun, but as far as he's got two set up, try and get 2 people at the same time so you can hang out, talk and do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not an interesting job doing it. But those are the main things, find out what you need, find out what's more important that you want to start with, get the devices that you want to hold them with, and get people who are willing to give their time consistently. Because if you only have one person who's doing it every couple of months, it's gonna go nowhere. So,
What did you said to not start with past burger? If we were starting off from scratch.
but he had a thought, let me do that and then I'll go with that.
Danny.
What
No,
was?
no, let's go with Fed.
Okay.
First.
Okay, so I worked on multiple things. I actually did Islandora, which is open source, but you kind of need an IT person to help with that. Help set it up. I found it very easy to use. Past Perfect is more for museums. It has objects, library, archives, and photos. So it's kind of good, but if you aren't going to use all of it, it's also so the web edition is much easier to use than Past Perfect 5 was. So funding is going to be one thing because you're going to want to have to pay for the support. Because I'll tell you, I have never had a problem with support with them. I adore them. They are fantastic. For our needs, I'm using it because they had it. And I don't dare try and switch them to something else. I think someone would have an aneurysm. It's just too scary. Like I've already pushed them to their limits with the changes that I made. Trying to change them over to something else I think would be too much. And that's part of the reason why I'm putting the objects in there now, because there's this whole catalog that we're not using. So why aren't we using it? Why are we using a whole separate Past Perfect program when we can put everything together? So for our purposes, it works, but for somewhere like the size of this, at least to start, I would look at other programs. If you want, I can send you some options. But one of the issues, I'll have to check because I'm sure some have had a lot of updates that I'm not aware of because I haven't been using them. But there are others that are more geared towards an archive versus like a straight up museum. So that's part of it. And also if you can find something that's less expensive or open source, if you have someone who might be able to help you with IT, that's great. And another question about community, I know we have the high school around here. Maybe talking to some kids who are interested in history, maybe talking to the history program over there and seeing if anyone is interested in getting some hands-on volunteering experience. You know, kids are always looking for those things for their college applications. What a great way to do it.
Our college students, is there a need for internships
Yes.
and opportunity for hours, that kind of thing? UTF
Absolutely.
Religious program.
We have a program through Flagler, and I usually have one or two interns my side, and then we have one or two over at the oldest house. So there is definitely a need.
Okay.
But what I'm going to say, one of the things that I try and do, I call it meaningful. So not only are we using you for human resources, but we're teaching you something on top of it. So I already had an issue with that when I first came in, where they were kind of being used as go do this project and then that was it. For me, when I work with them, like the hurricanes hit, I pulled them right off their project. I said, I'm going to teach you how to set up for a hurricane. I'm going to show you how to break down. Oh, we have to go put up an exhibit. You're going to come, you're going to see how to put it in the exhibit. Like it might not be exactly for here, but if there's an opportunity to just show them something different and not just lock them into that project and let them go, I feel like it behooves them to get that cross training and to come out of it and be like, yeah, I really want to do that. I have an intern that I did that with last semester, and I'm not doing interns this semester because this is supposed to be a quiet year and I'm busier the first 2 weeks than I was all last year because we have a big Black History exhibit going on. But my intern that was doing our processing last semester emailed and said, I can't get an internship, but I remember you saying that you wanted help with your blog. I'd really like to help. I want to volunteer. So she's coming in on Monday. We're going to discuss how many hours, and I'm going to be like, this is what we want to do. Your name's going on it. People are going to see your work. You can add it to your portfolio. We have a digital project that we call Now and Then. We had 2 interns do it. We have the slide rule. And did you see that one?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so if you go, yeah, if you go onto our website, go under Learn Digital Projects and scroll down, you're gonna see Now and Then. They talk about buildings in St. Augustine. We have old pictures and they went and took new pictures and then put them on top of each other. So when you slide it, it's pretty much right on top of each other.
And they're
You can see
really,
the old and
they
new
did
one.
an amazing job, because I mean, that, you have to get
Yeah.
the right angle and the right,
Oh,
everything.
yeah,
There's some of them are just, I mean, they're perfect.
yeah, and I had
sit there and play.
2 interns do that and their names are on it, so they can show whoever they need to show. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, someone that they're interviewing with, whatever. This is a project that I helped on. So I make sure that their names get out there. So definitely, I highly recommend reaching out to the local school, colleges, anyone you think might be interested.
Follow-up question.
Yes.
If I may. You mentioned outreach a couple of times. And I hear it.
Yes.
Because we're always looking for resources. When we get settled into our hopefully forever home, presumably the latter part of this year, might you be available to come spend the day with us and help us put together a plan and some preliminary budgeting and
Oh, sure.
kind of figure out where we are?
Whether she
Absolutely.
knows or not, she knows.
Pardon me?
I said whether she knows or not, she's already signed up for that.
Yeah. All I have to do is I just have to know the date. I actually just got asked to be part of our board meetings, which I'm very excited about. Because I'm nosy and I want to know what's going on in the organization. But also because it partially, the library used to be called the Colony. And then in the past year, I started working very closely with our executive director, Megan, and I bridged that gap. And I feel like we have flourished since we've done that. And I'm talking about as an organization.
Mhm.
So just give me a few dates.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Give me a few dates so that way I can just get it cleared with her. And I'd be happy to come up anytime.
Thank you, Shane.
Yeah, and this is part of what I'm doing. You guys aren't the only ones that I've worked with. I've worked with Halifax and Daytona. I got to meet Heather and Kimberly. We actually accidentally met at HistoryCon at Museum of Arts and Sciences. We're actually going to be there Saturday. I'm giving a talk. So if anyone's interested in coming and hearing my talk, you are welcome to come. But we met there, we exchanged cards and Heather became the director. And they were doing the same thing, looking for digital outreach. And she called me for some questions. I've done Trinity, and I've helped a few other people. So this is my outreach, is trying to help people who are trying to get these things off the ground. Our chief librarian does outreach, trying to get donations in so that way we can continue to grow our collections. And that's kind of where we're at, like trying to build these relationships in the community.
First of all, the Halifax history, that bank,
Yes.
that building.
Yes.
That was where my grandfather worked as a teller back in the 1940s.
That's so cool.
And they still have the teller cage there, like.
Yep.
Yeah, and that was always, I thought that was so neat. I didn't believe my dad when he told me that, and I looked it up in the directories. But my second question is, can you share with us how big your collection is? Because you guys have amazing stuff. And how far back it goes.
So we have stuff going to the 1500s. We have a lot of church records, baptismal, marriage records, death records. We got that from the diocese. So I'm going to kind of walk through. So as I said, we have about 5,800, 6,000 books. Downstairs, we have a map room. I don't know exactly how many maps, but I know we have 5, 6 cases. And then we have boxes on top of the cases, and then loose maps that haven't been processed yet on top of those cases. So we've got a lot of stuff down there. We have a fridge that's full of nitrates. If no one knows, or someone doesn't know what a nitrate is, it's the celluloid film that was used before Kodak safety film was created. So if you handled it, if you touched your face, licked it, you would get really sick. It was very toxic. And it was also combustible. So if you didn't keep it in a cool, dry environment, it could spontaneously combust on you. My favorite is when the firefighters come to us every year and we get to show them everything. They're super excited like kids. But then you have like the one guy who's like the professional. He's like, okay, guys, here we go. So I have my fledgling Robert, I might go talk to them about the history stuff, I'll go do the adult stuff. And I'm like, by the way, guys, here, here's the valves, here's the fire alarms, here's the sprinklers, here's the combustible stuff. If, however it gets knocked out, it's highly unlikely, but I'm just letting you guys know it's there. After that, we have our manuscript collection, and we have about 150 processed. Now, we also have what's called MC16. MC16 are the collections that aren't big enough to fit into a full banker's box. So we have like 300 and something of those. It might be a couple, it might be like one folder, it might be a half a box, but it wasn't enough to fill. So they kind of put it in this kind of hodgepodge place. We have a huge scrapbook collection. We have photo album collections. We have newspaper collections. We have art collections. We have the objects over at the oldest house. We also have what we call our vertical files, and they're sort of, if there wasn't a way to make a collection out of it, it's like subject files. So if you're looking for, say, I'm just going to pull this one out because it's very strange. Cafe Erotica was a strip club that someone opened up by a school, and it was huge in the 90s and it closed in the early 2000s. But like we have a file on that, which is very obscure.
Right.
So these subject files have everything from like African-American history, military history of muster rolls from the Civil War, 1700s, British, Spanish, American. We have populations. We have St. Johns County, we have the city, and then we have the colonial buildings. And then we have, as I said, the biography cards, biography files. We have the St. Augustine record on microfilm from 1899 to 2008. And then we have it digitally from 2009 going forward. Yes.
I'm curious, is that searchable, the St. Augustine records? Microfilm, is it microfilm?
It's microfilm. 1899 to 2008 is microfilm, so it's not searchable. Technically, so I've been deleting those records out of our catalog. I created a document, and I have someone who has been updating that every month. And I just have to put it online. On the research library page, I have what's called the online reading room, and I created accordion where you can click, and like it'll have the manuscript collections. It'll have an inventory of what collections we have, numerical and alphabetical, and you can click on that. It'll bring you to the record in our catalog. So that's my next step. I have to PDF that and get it into its own little space on there. That's going to be one of my next things. So I'm working on it. Yeah. So, but that'll be 2009 forward. I don't have anything before then because it's all microfilm. We do have these Florida papers, Stetson papers, and other microfilm as well, plus all the oral histories. We have phone books, we have city directories. Yeah, we have phone books from the early 1900s, city directories from, I think, again, like 1899 forward, until like 2001.
I was wondering why that mattered, but then back then, when you look at it, it tells the person's occupation and
Yes.
someone who else lives there. And
A lot of people will do it for both genealogy and property work.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
really impressed. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
My grandmother was that last year.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's just the kind of overall of everything that we've got. We've got other stuff too. That's right. We have a music collection too. We have like actual like records and LPs and cassettes. I have a small exhibit. We have 2 exhibit spaces that are rotating, which is what I do. So we're putting up Black Joyce, Jim Crow, St. Augustine this week for Black History Month. It's going to be our entire second floor of Tovar House. And I created a music exhibit. So we have like Cracker Stories. I have Gamble Rogers, Joan Taylor Oliveros. We have St. Augustine High, their jazz band, when they were doing fundraising for Montreux. In 1996, I actually found a YouTube video, made a QR code so people can zap it and go and watch the concert. There are a bunch of like holiday CDs for St. Augustine that is used for fundraising. I have things like that in the exhibit. We have 2 mini cases. So we had donated to us this huge cabinet. It's in 3 pieces. Yeah, it's this big middle piece and then 2 side pieces. And it's from Markland House from Flagler.
Henry Flowers.
Yeah, Henry Flagler's.
It's enormous. It's probably like as big as maybe.
Yeah, it's almost as big as this board.
Right.
Yeah, and at first we were like, what are we gonna do with this? And then we decided to start putting objects and making the exhibits. What was that?
At his estate.
It was at his estate. It was owned by John Versace. And then when he moved, he donated it to us because he was one of our board members. He's a past president. So he was like, this will be great for you guys. And we're like, oh, will it? And then we actually started with the cabinet of curiosities, where Robert and I just walked through all of our objects and we were like, that looks weird. Let's take that. Like we have a Tammany Hall iron bank. Yeah, I'm bringing that. I'm bringing that to Moaz with us. We have the gigantes heads that were used for the days of Spain. We have a pirate and we have the queen of, the evil queen from Snow White. I'm gonna be bringing them, so that way when I drive in the back seat, I can hold them up. I'm gonna mispronounce it. Robert's gonna be very upset with me because he's a military historian. But there's a German gun from, I think it's from World War II. Might be from earlier. Don't hold me to that. I'm terrible with dates.
Mauser.
It's not a Mauser. He yelled at me. So- Yeah, okay, so if you do come, my talk is on, I like weird history. I like stuff that's outside of the box. But I'll tell you that in a second. I'm gonna tell you the last bit that I'm bringing. I'm bringing a 3.5-inch floppy disk that I found that has nothing, like I have no idea what's on it. But that's because most kids today have no idea what it is, and it makes me giggle that this is technically a historical artifact because 25 years old. And when I realized that, I was like, how old am I? Wasn't 1990 like yesterday? Like, what is going on? I just graduated high school. When did that happen? So, and then I realized it's been almost 25 years since I graduated high school. And I was like, when did that happen? So that's the last thing. My talk, I don't like traditional history. And you might be surprised to hear that because I do have a master's degree in history, but I cannot remember a date to save my life most of the time. And like our historian will just like dryly regurgitate facts at me and I will just literally glaze over at him. Do you remember Beauty and the Beast when Cogsworth is taking Belle around the castle? He's like, flying buttresses. I'm like, I'm gonna swirl to the West Wing like Belle did. Like I can't. But I love stories that make me go, what is going on?
You'd be in the library and Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, and that's what part of what our blog is. The blog is the weird outside the box stories that made me go, why don't we know about that? And what we found out was with the surf that people are really interested in modern history. You can get the basic St. Augustine history everywhere, every tourist spot. They may not have the facts correct, but you can hear it everywhere. I like finding these weird stories. Like, did you ever hear about the St. Augustine monster?
No.
So 1896, this is a date I remember because I care. 1896, some kids go onto the beach on Anastasia Island and they find this weird carcass on the beach. They call Dr. Webb, who is the founder of the St. Augustine Historical Society, to come. They're like, what is this? He says, I don't know. They actually did take samples. Someone thought that they found a new species of gigantic squid. Someone else said that it's a whale. So it's been this thing back and forth for almost a century. Is it a new species or is it a whale? Well, finally, they analyzed the evidence, the DNA, and it was a sperm whale. It's just it had beached itself for so long that it was degrading. Yeah, it was degrading in the sun. So it looked really, really weird when they found it. But there was one guy out there who says, no, it's a giant squid. But the DNA says, no, it's a sperm whale. We are the only ones who still have a piece of it in our collections. So those are the stories that I like. I'm going to be talking about something called The Secret, a Treasure Hunt. And 1980, there was a publisher from New York City who found a new, well, he heard about a new genre called armchair treasure hunting. Some guy in Britain like hid this actual jeweled golden hair, and he made a picture book with the clues for people to actually find this.
Mhm.
There's a scandal with his ex-girlfriend who knew where it was and told her new boyfriend. But this guy was like, I love this idea, but I'm not going to do a measly picture book. I'm going to go big or go home because I'm a New Yorker. So he gathered this team of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, artists, photographer, and authors. And he created this 230-page book. And the story that they tell is pretty much like the fairy people came from Britain and Europe. They came over across the ocean because civilized man was crushing nature. So they took their jewels with them, came over here, found the Native Americans, made friends with them, and then civilized man came over, ruined everything, chased them out west. And they said, forget it, we're gonna disappear, we're gonna bury our treasure, and only kind-spirited people can find the treasure. So this was 1980. This guy went to 12 cities across North America, and he buried these actual ceramic casks encased in plexiglass. And he just went to a public park dressed as a maintenance worker and a shovel in the box, dug a hole, stuck it in, covered it, wrote notes of how he wanted the clues to be found, took pictures of landmarks and buildings, sent it to a painter, and he wrote verses and had the painter create these paintings that go together to help you figure out what city and where it is. One of them is St. Augustine. If you know anything about St. Augustine, these people are just digging illegally, trying to find this stupid thing. So if you don't have permission from the city or the archaeology department, you're literally destroying artifacts. So Fountain of Youth is the most popular one because the first thing that's in the verse is written in water, or the first chapter written in water. First chapter is literally on their gate. And a lot of these people have discovered it because there's a show called Expedition Unknown. The host name is Josh Gates. He's an archaeologist, and he goes around the world talking about unsolved events, lost cities, buried treasure, stuff like that. That was 2018. Most of the treasure hunters discovered it then. And poor John Fraser of Fountain of Youth, everybody, well, that's the most popular place, but people like dig up his front gate all the time. I found it out because within the first couple of months of my starting at the St. Augustine Historical Society, I had discovered this in the 1990s in high school. Forgot about it until 2018. I did see that episode. I get a call, what photos do you have of Fountain of Youth? I was like, okay, well, is there a certain area? Is there a time period? Like we ask questions, try and point people in the right direction. No, just a Fountain of Youth. That's weird. So it went on for a couple of minutes like that. And I said, here's our online catalog. Go look there. If you have any questions, call back. I looked over. Does anybody know Charles Tingley? Charles has been there for 40 years. He is my gem. We call him the Oracle, and he hates that. But he knows like everything about St. Augustine. He's our historian.
These are short.
Yes, yes. And he also hoards our stuff and brings me stuff. Yeah. But I looked at him and I was like, that's weird. And he goes, oh, it's one of those secret people. They keep digging up St. Augustine. And I was like, I know what that is. And then I realized that's bad. So I found out that there's actually a community in St. Augustine of treasure hunters. I got to meet them. The people in the community are super chill. They love sharing their puzzles with each other. They're very respectful. Some have shared their solutions with me. And it's as simple as I followed the clues and I walked by and there was a big tree and I think it's that tree. There are other people who sent me a 100-page packet of breaking down every single clue that they found in the painting and the verse, putting it to the history. And they did like mathematical calculations. And it's just insane. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not that complicated. I'm not so sure it's as simple as just walking around, but like, those are the things that I like to find and I like to share. So it has not been found. As far as I know, I double check the wiki before I give my talk. Hopefully. Yes,
I have a question. Obviously, you're very passionate about what you're doing. And there are people in this room that have been here for generations.
Mhm.
There are people that have come to this community and love it. With a hard sell to get people interested in history to the point that, for instance, these buildings would be preserved. So when you're talking to powers that be, so to speak, people who maybe not have that same passion, what's one thing you would say to them about the cultural relevance of what you're doing, what this organization is about? What's a good line you could give them?
I would say, what's the story? I don't want to know about the archaeology about that building. I don't, when it's built might be important because of historic. What is the story? Who lived there? Why is it important? I'm gonna say it depends. People hate that. That's actually my most often given answer. But I would say if you're trying to sell it, who's your audience? What's the story? Is it someone who's looking at financial whatevers? How is it going to benefit the community long-term? If you're looking at politicians, I'm gonna say money probably talks. What about it? Why does it need to be saved? And is there a way to save it that maybe doesn't cost them as much? Are there grants? Are there people willing to help fund something? As I said, I don't care about traditional history. I know it's there. I remember it from my textbooks. But if you catch me with one of these little stories that I'm telling about that one thing that caught my attention, I'm going to be engaged. So it might be a matter of fact of finding out what's going to engage them and how are you going to capture their attention to make sure that your community stays preserved.
Well, this battle may be lost. But
No,
I'm just
yeah.
curious about, how we might approach it.
And I don't know. It sounds to me like there's some underhanded stuff going on. I do not approve.
Liz and I are gonna chain ourselves to the front. Before the bulldozers come, so.
Great. He's such a mean dog.
He's very ferocious.
He's so ferocious.
Archie will.
Yeah, Archie will help. It may or may not be. It might be I don't know who the right ear is. I don't know this area, but it might be catching the right ear and saying, hey, we don't think this was done properly. And can you help us? That might be, can you get a lawyer to give you a little pro bono? You're a 501c3, you're a nonprofit, and they give you a pro bono and double check on it for you. Throw the lawyers in, why not?
Yeah.
But that's also going to show that you're very serious about it.
Mhm.
If you get a lawyer involved and they can find something, it might at least halt it long enough to have the conversation change.
We're trying,
Mhm.
and then we're gonna chain ourselves. But we'll try the other stuff first.
What other questions does anyone have?
Great program.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very
Look forward to
welcome.
having you back.